Welcome everybody. Thank you for coming here. Even though we have a snowstorm, it's nice to see we have shareholders here. And I'll be doing a presentation. I'm also open for questions at all times. And so basically we just finished our year 2025. And it's been a great year for many reasons. Of course, everybody knows that gold and silver, which is really special, has been hitting all-time highs, which is really exciting for our business. And it's after, capital flows. It's top down, eh? Gold hit an all-time high, but how come it's not affected? I mean, it affected both. Finally, we've seen a stagnation for almost 3 years. Now we're starting to see life in the stock again. We successfully were able to finance the company. We're fully financed for 2026 to go with our projects and that. But it's just nice. It's nice to see movement. It's nice to see movement in the juniors, but people have to understand, events like this, it's cash flow. It's a top-down event. Gold goes up, then the majors goes up, mid-tiers go up, and then finally it starts to trickle down to us as juniors. So it's coming. And I have to say it's coming at a right time, what I like is because I like that it's happening now because we've worked a long time to get to the point where we are now. It took us a long time to put the pieces together, and as a lot of you know, our mandate was to, we were working at a historical placer gold district, and our mandate was to find where this placer gold came from. And we made a lot of headways. But still, I'll go through the milestones of 2025. And you have to keep in mind, what was challenging, what I always kept to do is that, the fact that we had a low market cap, it was important to keep the company financed, but also to keep working. And it was always a trade-off between raising capital to, within a proportion of what was our market cap for each of the year that we were working. But still, we managed to do for what was a modest exploration budget the last 3 years. We came a long way. We did a lot. Disclaimers, always important. Forward-looking statements, I might say some, just take note of that. So one of the most important, we did a modest drill program of the saddle reef structure. And what's nice is that what we confirmed at least is that we already announced that the saddle reef structure that we identified as one of the probable sources of the placer gold deposit, we're able to confirm that at least it's gold bearing for at least 4 kilometers. Now we know the structure which should go on at least 8 kilometers or more, but at least within 4 kilometers. Why? Because we drilled in 2 zones. So point A to point B, well, there's gold, so we're sort of making an assumption that the whole zone might be mineralized, might be gold bearing. And that's something. So that's a major structure there. And people lose the fact of that, is that it's, when we're talking about gold exploration, it's all about the structure. Of course, it makes headlines if you hit a, you have a big drill target, so many grams per tons and that. But really what it comes down to, it's the structure. And, we're just scratching the surface of something which looks huge, just huge. And what else it confirmed? It confirmed that we're basically hitting a classic saddle reef structure. Now, this is important. Saddle reef structures, it's as you see here. You see is that it's the structure that we found. It's layered, basically volcanic sedimentary rock, and then there was a folding that happened, and then what you have, it's called these anticlines. Anticlines are just these bell curve layers of rock. Very common in geology, but what makes this one special is that when there was the folding, it concentrated gold within the axis of the fold. And this is what we have, and that's what's called the saddle reef. So yeah, so it's an anticline, yes, we.
How deep did you go?
We didn't go that deep.
Okay.
We didn't go that deep. I'll come up to that, but no, it was very shallow depth drilling, very shallow depth. Which again, keep in mind, sometimes some people, you might hear companies do extraordinary drill results, and good for them and that, but sometimes you have to look, how deep, was it half a kilometer deep, before they, we're hitting gold from surface. I mean, this all started off, we found the structure a bit by chance and the good fortune of a prospector called Monsieur Grondin. So Mr. Grondin, because the problem in the Beauce, and this is what has stumped all companies for 175 years, is that even though the Placer gold deposit was well known, it's part of lore of the area, the site of the first gold rush in Canada, with industrial scale placer gold mining, the source of where those gold grains, those gold nuggets came from was unknown. It has stumped everybody for 175 years. And we're the first company in that long that basically had been putting the pieces together to find out where the source is. And we made a lot of headwinds. So coming back to that question is that how we found the structure was, it was a prospector. A prospector on this land, Mr. Grondin, found an outcrop. The difficulty is that in southern Quebec, is that all the valleys, there's a thick glacier till overburden. In other words, a lot of people know, basic geology is that Canada was once covered by ice caps. They melted 10,000 years ago. And what it did is that the different glacier periods just bulldozed all the mountain ranges and just filled up all the valleys. So southern Quebec has, even though has great indications and probably a wealth of minerals, the exploration is difficult because of very thick glacial till overburden. That's what we have to deal with. So finding outcrops was hard. When you go up north, it's easy. The Shield, the Canadian Shield, everything was stripped away. People fly by helicopters. Oh, look, funny looking rock. They go down and make discoveries. It's not that simple, but I'm simplifying things, but it's a bit what it is. Us, it was more challenging. So finding outcrops, well, we have a prospector who's been working at it for over 30 years. He found an outcrop, and he dynamited the outcrop himself, and that not recommended. Funny story there, which maybe one day can be recounted. But still, so he found an outcrop about the size of a bus, and when we sampled that outcrop, well, look, we got 10 grams. We got up to 10 grams per ton. Not only that is that we were able to get physical gold grains from the outcrop, and when we look at those physical gold grains, so in other words, gold grains from bedrock, which is really important, and when we matched the gold grain that we got from there, it matched the placer nuggets we got from the deposit, which would be downstream or downhill, you could say, into the valley. That's why we were able to make a match that we found a structure. As soon as you leave that structure, there's no gold. So it's all about, right now, it's all a question of that. You found it, once you find the structure, you got to keep following it. So we found a structure, we scratched at the surface, there was gold. We did some drilling, as you said, yes, shallow depth. We only went 40 meters down, which is nothing in this business. I mean, that's still almost considered surface, 40 meters down. But we're able to do at least a lot of drilling, and we're able to do scissor cross drilling along the structure. And our drilling has been a great success so far. If we just look at the Grondin zone, which we've been focusing on, I mean, 80% of our drill holes hit gold. And that's almost unheard of. And I didn't realize how great that was until we had the technician which was doing our 3D modeling. And he works for a lot of companies, he does a lot of these things. And he's the one who says, no, it says your drill hit success rate, it's equivalent to somebody, only companies that are doing infill drilling for a resource have that hit ratio. So that's extraordinary. So what it means is that the structure we identify is a very tightly controlled structure. So once you got a structure and it's tightly controlled, it means you don't have to disperse anymore to try to find it. And it supports what was happening before, because every time we did find an outcrop or other people that tried to drill in the past, once you get outside from the structure zone of the antiform, there's no gold. As soon as you're outside the structure, there's just no gold, it's barren, there's not even a signature. But as soon as you drill into the saddle reef, you start to hit gold. So again, it's all about structure. Now think about it. So what that's another thing we did in 2025. We're able to do a 3D analysis of our drilling and to try to get a better understanding of the structure. So if you look at the structure, like our shareholder just asked a question, yeah, if it's only 40 meters deep that we drilled, that's peanuts. So obviously it's open at depth, and obviously we only drilled along 600 meters, and this thing goes on for many kilometers. So it's open along strike. That means at each end. It's open at depth, So again, we're just scratching a tip of an iceberg of what could be a massive structure. So, you know, we've been, our modeling, we only use the 300, 0.3 ppm, sorry, or 0.3 grams per ton and up for the analysis. So if you look at the model, you know, just, I mean, it's nowhere, I mean, I'm not making an economic analysis here. We don't have enough work for that. But it's very indicative that, you know, we're heading between, you know, 0.3 grams to, and our drill up to 11 grams. But we've been having so far a consistent 2 grams or so. And that's something. So you can just do the math, you know, go hundreds of meters down and go many kilometers with a width maybe up to 50 meters. If you do the math, you're going to see that, yeah, you know, is it a structure that could have the potential of millions of ounces? Oh, yes. That's what we found. And saddle reef structures around the world, the ones that look like this, I mean, this is, so far we're hitting, which is almost a textbook example of what a saddle reef is. And saddle reef deposits, the best Canadian example would be the Dufferin mine in Nova Scotia. But of course, the mother of all examples, the textbook examples, is the Bendigo deposit in Australia. And so far, there's very strong similarities as to the type of deposit. Now, when we talk about saddle reef, we talk about, it's composed, as I said, remember the bell-shaped layers? Well, the bell-shaped layers, the lines that go on the side, these are the limbs with the gold concentrated in the axis. What we're seeing from the drilling, and it demonstrated especially with the Giroux zone, or the 2 zones, is that when we drilled it, when we pass one of the limbs, we get about 1 gram per ton reading. But the closer you get to the axis, to the center, this is where the grades go up. Now, mind you, we didn't do a lot of drilling yet, but everything so far is very indicative. So every time we hit the higher grades, when we hit the 5 grams, 11 grams, it's when you hit the axis. Now, another reason why it gets exciting when we have to go deeper and even along strike is that if we follow the model, and so far the model seems to be cooperating with what we're discovering, is that we should find along the axis deeper and high-grade pockets of gold. That's what the model dictates, and that's what we have. That's why we have to drill at depth. We have to identify. We still need work to find out what's the dip, or you could say the angle of the structure. But once we find that, that's where you got to hit that structure. You got to try to hit as much as possible the axis, and we believe we can hit some high grade zones. We'll see. We need more drilling for that, but so far the model it's very promising. So, you know, do we have another Bendigo? We need more work to find out, but that could be exciting. That's what excites us to keep going, because Bendigo is a structure which was discovered just like the Beauce. It started off with a placer gold rush. And then when they found the structure where the gold came from, it was from a saddle reef structure. And once they found that structure, that's been mined now for like 100 years. So far, what, 20 million ounces? So, yeah, you know, it's what keeps us going. So again, very nice strict. So we now confirm that, you know, we're on the tail of a very well-controlled structure, which is open at depth and length, could be massive. And we got to keep drilling, and that's what we're gonna do. So far, we're having great success. We're on the right target, and also basically, I mean, kudos to our geologist Jean Bernard for great targeting. And I have a better appreciation of my geologist. Like, again, this discovery was made just from an bust-sized outcrop. The rest, yeah, we did geophysics, field survey, soil analysis. But the rest was guessing where that structure was, you know, beneath the thick overburden. At some places, the overburden can be up to 20 meters or more. You don't see the structure. Yet, most of our drill holes hit the structure. A very fine, very narrow structure, very well-defined structure. So that's great targeting on our geologist. So I'm happy that he's part of our team. Another thing we did, which was really exciting, is that it's the historical placer gold deposit. Now, just a bit geological context. This deposit is about 2 kilometers south, but parallel to the saddle reef structure, to the antiform saddle reef structure that we're drilling. which is believed to be one of the sources of the placer gold channel. But the placer gold channel itself, it has a historical, I mean, it's been mined in the past. It's a long channel. It goes on for many kilometers, basically over 8 kilometers even. It's funny, huh? It's very similar to the length of what we're seeing to the Saddle Reef. Anyways, what we did is that a couple years ago, we found or were able to acquire missing drill logs of when this placer channel was drilled in the late 50s, early 60s, and it was also exploited in the 1960s. Anyways, so we're able to consolidate all this drill data, which again is a first. It hasn't been done because even though there was some drilling done in the 80s, there was some drilling done by Eurogold, a predecessor company of mine, and also we did some bedrock drilling as well underneath the placer channel. So we had all this, we had hundreds and hundreds of drill holes that we had to collate, add data, analyze, interpret. It's not easy interpreting drill data from the late 50s, because what happened is that even from late 60s to the 80s to even more recently, each geologist has different wording to describe the same material. You know, if somebody says, oh, it's rotten bedrock, well, what he means, it means saprolite. But back then, it's rotten bedrock. So you have to understand all these nuances to put all the model together, which we did. And what's amazing is that we also applied LIDAR, all new data, and all basically doing an analysis that's never been done on this placer deposit using modern methods and a compilation of all the data. And what we came up with is that we believe our exploration target is almost double than what it was previously believed. Now, why do we call it an exploration target? So we have an exploration target. We can what 3.86 cubic meters of material, which is the layers that contain the placer gold. 0.8 to 4.9 grams, so almost 4 grams per cubic meter. First, why do we call it exploration data? Because even though we had a lot of data, which makes this, pretty, which brings us up to a very high conviction rate, we cannot call it a gold resource, because most of the data we were relying on was done pre-2001. So in other words, in this industry, if your geology data or drill data predates the new norms that were coming in, the new norms for 3101, you cannot use that data for a gold resource. You can only use it what's called exploration target. So put it this way, if all this drill data was done after 2001, then yes, instead of the exploration target, perhaps it would have passed for a gold resource. So that's why it's called an exploration target. Still, it's just very indicative. And what we learned, everybody was always assuming the placer channel to be fairly, something really linear, and the gold just spread out all along this many kilometers of linear bed inside. But we found out, no. What we found is that gold entered the valley through tributaries, some current, for example, the Giroux River, and some ancient, which we can clearly see through LIDAR reading of the terrain. And it correlates well because where there was high-grade placer gold is all at the bottom, at the end of all these tributaries that entered the valley. Created deltas. So how we're going to approach this, we're going to study those deltas. So what it makes is it's pockets of high-grade placer gold, which we want to go look at. So that's the next phase. And placer gold is something, there's a potential there, which this could be brought for advances to be perhaps a mining operation. Placer golds are known to be low capex. The gold is not embedded in bedrock. It's sitting on top of bedrock, but there's an overburden on top. So it's we got to go explore that deeply. But there is a potential there that perhaps. Perhaps we could be close to having a gold reserve or an official. There's a historical placer gold deposit that's known. We gotta remove the word historical on it to make it a deposit. This requires more work, but it's something which could be accessible. Very exciting. And do the math. We're not allowed to say how many ounces that is, but you can do the math. It gives you an idea. You know, so there's, you know, potentially just in placer gold at today's gold. I mean, it's $500 million to a couple $2 billion of placer gold right there. So do we want to go look at that? Yeah. You know, we want to see, can we bring this forward? Can we bring this forward to a gold reserve? Can it be studied further? Can we bring this up to a mining project? It's definitely worth looking into and advancing. There could be value there. Also, a little side note, you know, it's we never try to miss a good opportunity. A couple years ago, we had the opportunity when phosphate was suddenly going up in value. We took a big grab bag, a giant bin of phosphate properties, and said, "Well, take it all, because it's really inexpensive to just claim claims." So we took like what was like almost 30 phosphate properties, and when we have time in the funds, we'll go look to see if there's any gems in there. And we found a gem. We found a gem. We found a nice apatite gem, which is the mineral that contains phosphate. So we're going to focus on one property, which looks really promising. It's in the same area as the other two main phosphate operators. So our property is near Ariane Phosphate, not too far away also from First Phosphate. And so we found a very promising property, and really with exceptional apatite rock. And so basically it's a rock with the apatite crystals, which contains a phosphate. So we did sampling. We're still waiting for results from that, but it looks extremely promising. And even though our focus will be on gold, this could be an asset which could bring shareholder value in the future. We'll see. But for now, it's really indicative, and it's exciting. It's something we have in our portfolio. So that was a review of what we did in 2025. If there's any questions, I could move basically to a more formal presentation of the company. For each year we get new shareholders, especially this year. Lately, we have a lot of new shareholders. So I'll do a more formal presentation of the company after this. Any questions?
Patrick,
Oui.
Given that you had some good success in 2025, were you approached by all the majors? Because usually that's their strategy. When they, a little company like yours finds some placers, some key spot, they try to come in.
Well,
have you been approached by the major companies?
I got to be careful what I say as approach. Nothing is formal. Are we piquing interest? I know we're looked at. I mean, it's don't forget, it's an old mining district which never became an exploration camp, and so we're suddenly and I think it was out of sight, out of mind. People just write it off. Says, look, they never found a source, so there's no source. But the reality is nobody really looked. So we kept looking at it, and we're always sort of an odd animal for doing that in that area. But look, we made success, and so that did pique interest of some people. And we're being looked at. We're far. We're still in grassroots. It's grassroots exploration as far as hard rock drilling. Now the placer is different. I mean, there's a historical deposit there. I just can't say publicly things, but it's, there's interest. Of course, gold going up, and it's sort of there's an obvious attraction of why it's attracting people in that, and it's. But also note is that what would attract. Over 100 years ago, a lot of the major gold projects around the world were placer deposits. Think of Placer Dome back then. They were placer projects, but there's none of these companies now. None of the majors are doing placer. The last one was in 1990, I think it was in the Yukon. I forgot the name. That there was a major involved in placer mining operation, but since then they've been out of sight, out of mind for decades, like almost 1-2 generations. placer mining is very interesting. There are major placer mining operations happening around the world, even in the Yukon. I mean, the Yukon we see the Yukon, as we see on TV, we think of three guys and a loader and that. But there are some significant sized placer operations happening, which up 30 men working, and other operations similar like this around the world. But you don't hear about them because they're private. It's not big companies. They're low key. They're private. A lot of capital. You could see, so there are some serious companies out there that are interested in placer deposits, that work placer deposits, but they're companies you never heard of because they're all privately funded. Why? It's because of its size. When you make a big, even if we make a big let's say we find a big hard rock deposit, it's really rare that you have the junior which ends up mining a hard rock deposit. It's often big majors because it's big investments, capital intensive and that. But placer is different. Placer historically are lower capex, maybe deposits smaller where it doesn't, maybe it hasn't attracted majors, but there is an industry around there. There are key players around the world which love the stuff. They come in, they finance it, it's private and that. And we're open, basically, we're open to whatever makes sense that would bring value to shareholders, put it this way. If it makes sense and we could all make money, and we'll see where that goes. But there's nothing, I have nothing to announce, formal stuff like this, but are we being looked at? Oh yeah, for sure. Especially with gold going up. Yeah. Placer deposits placer deposits are starting to attract attention from all kinds of people that just weren't there before. Yeah, I could say that. Yeah. So, the water. Mais si je réponds en français, hein, j'ai pas de problème, je peux répondre en français. No? Okay. So I'm going to do I'll do the formal presentation, which I'll do because some of you might have seen it already, but if not, still it's been updated, and it gives you it's a whole story about who we are and where we're from.
Avant de faire ta présentation formelle, est-ce que tu pourrais nous dire qu'est-ce que tu envisages pour 2026?
Oui, yes. No, great question. Looking forward, 2026. Well, as people saw last quarter, we were able to finance. So we're fully financed for our exploration activities for starting this year. Like we already announced, we do plan to drill this winter the salary structure. You see, it's very compelling, and we just barely scratched the surface on that. And I think the more we go at it, the bigger discovery we have chance of making. And also, we just keep confirming that it's a structure. We've identified the salary structure. It's gold bearing, and it could potentially be massive and go on for kilometers and at depth. But we got to know that by drilling. So we will continue on that. And also, we will be moving forward with advancing the placer project, the historical placer deposit, that to see if we can attempt to confirm the exploration target. If we can advance that to what can we do to advance that to potentially to a gold resource, so we can move forward with that. So no, it's really exciting. So we're fully funded to start our work. We can't wait to start working. So, and again, I'm really happy. I'm happy that this is happening right now, because we spent all these years advancing this project and just acquiring the knowledge that we just did not have before. There was a total lack of knowledge of all the geology surrounding this placer deposit, and we made the significant discovery here. The first in 175 years. We found a structure that's the source. We drilled it. We confirmed it's gold bearing. It goes on for many kilometers, and this is something that we just found out. So, finding this out now, and also finding out that the historical placer deposit could be much more significant than what was believed. Finding this out, coming to this conclusion now, just when gold is hitting all-time high, and we're starting to see a trickle-down effect of capital going from gold to the majors to the mid-tiers, and I think it's going to start following towards the juniors. So, in other words, more attention will be brought on us just at the right time of when we're doing something really exciting. So that's why I really like where we are right now, and that's why I look really forward to 2026. So I'll talk, for those that are new to the company, I'll talk more about, Beauce Gold Fields, what we're all about. So we have 3 main projects in our book. Is that we have, of course, the discovery of the saddle reef structure in the Beauce, which is believed to be the source of the placer gold I've just been explaining before. We also have placer gold deposits that we want to explore and potentially to see if we can bring it up to exploitation, see if we can start mining that. So that's something we want to study. We have 2 major placer channels that we want to explore. One, the very well-known one, which we have the exploration target. The other one is our Ditton property, which made a discovery of a new placer channel, an unknown placer channel, which is in southern Quebec, closer to the U.S. border, New Hampshire border, just 5 kilometers from the U.S. border. That's where, and also, of course, more to the side, but secondary is our phosphate project. Capital structure, again, it was really, we're at 138 million, which is still within the norms as far as junior exploration companies go. It was always a challenge. My challenge was always to, the last 3 years, it's not a secret, the last years was tough. Why was it tough? Not just for us, but for all juniors, because you could just look at a chart, TSX Venture, the volume just wasn't there. Interest, the capital market, the retail interest in investments in stocks wasn't catching the attention of resource companies. But still, we managed to always raise funds. We managed to always keep working. The challenge wasn't raising the funds. The challenge was to raise funds and not dilute the company too much. And it's something which I think we've succeeded. We always tried to keep financings within 10% of our market cap. But now, seeing that gold was taking off, hitting all-time high, I think now was the right time to raise more funds, the most possible. Still trying to keep a control and a conscious eye on dilution, but we have no choice. You got to raise the money to keep working, and we did. So we're funded. We did that, which brought us to 138 million shares outstanding, which is not so bad. Ownership, well, the biggest shareholder still, it's me, of the company, at 7.4%. HPQ Silicon, we settled a royalty debt with HPQ Silicon, so they're up to 4%. And if you count other insiders, that's about 1%. The rest, no institutional investors, it's all retail. Half of my shareholder base is in Quebec. A lot of them is in the Beauce. They love the project. It's part of their heritage. So our shareholder base is, it's Québécois, it's Canadian. I have a few large shareholders which come from abroad, but it's all individuals. The last time we had an institutional was a flow-through fund, which it's part of the structure of a flow-through fund. They got to do what's called a rollover, and it always happens at the worst possible moment. So they rolled over their fund. They're out. So that's the last institution we had was a flow-through fund. They're out. So we don't have any institutional investors as far as I know. It's all individuals, to des particuliers, all retail, and it's nice. Why? Because retail follow retail investors. They're more invested. It's not somebody else's money; it's their money, and and I have more passion for that because they follow what we're doing. They follow our story. They follow our progress, and it's a lot more fun this way. We sit on the same side. I'm a big shareholder with the shareholders, so we want this to work. We want to make discoveries. Beauce Gold Field now, we've been public for about almost 7 years now. We're a spin out of HPQ Silicon, another great company which I co-founded. I'm on the board. Symbol HPQ for those that want to have a look at it. It's very exciting. Je vais juste passer. Tu peux-tu rester? Tu t'en vas? Tu peux rester? Non. Je pensais que tu voulais me parler. Non. Ça va? OK. Excuse me. So why Beauce Gold Fields was spin out from HPQ Silicon because HPQ Silicon, I mean the project, its projects took up all the room, and the gold project that was in HPQ wasn't getting the deserved value that it needs as its own standalone project. That's why we did the spin out. So in 2019, shareholders of HPQ received Beauce Gold Fields shares as dividend. Beauce Gold Fields became a new publicly traded company that today we've been growing today. What it all starts is that HPQ, which now Beauce Gold Fields, had these placer gold properties, and my curiosity, it's what really bit me, and that's what got me started in this business a long time ago now. All these placer gold deposits, placer gold nuggets. A gold nugget is a gold anomaly. If you have a deposit that has been mined for decades, even over a century now, and it's still generating gold nuggets, it's a giant gold anomaly. The gold came from someplace. Where did it come from? Now, the idea is, if we trace from where it came from, perhaps we can make big discoveries. That was the raison d'être of Beauce Gold Fields. And I'm happy to say that after 7 years, we're there. We made the progress. We found that. So, again, explain when I talk about placer gold to low gold is gold that's in the bedrock. It's where the gold came from, where Mother Nature first put it. Placer gold, it's gold which was eroded from its hard rock source, transported by nature, either through water, glaciation, or other means, physically transported and deposited somewhere else to create a secondary deposit. Now that secondary deposit, the placer deposit, this is what was mined in the past. Now when we're talking about our Beauce Gold placer deposit in Saint-Simon-des-Mines, the swirl deposit, we're talking about that's it. A pre-glacial gold that was transported there. It's at the bottom of a valley, covered with a thick overburden. That's what it is. Now when we're talking about the saddle reef structure we found, it's the source of where the gold came from. So just that gold is gold, of course, but its origin type deposit is very, very different. So that's what it is. So we found that if we can trace back to where the placer gold came from, perhaps we can make a deposit. And it could be that the structure that we find, which is a source of placer gold, well, perhaps that's just the tip of an iceberg of an even bigger deposit, where it came from. Southern Quebec has been overlooked for a long time. As a lot of you know, a lot of the gold mines in Canada tend to be more to the north. In Quebec, there are more to the north. In southern Canada, or southern Quebec, the geology is different. But what's nice is that the last couple of years, I'm not alone. We share the same geology belt, which is mostly the Appalachian belt. Within subdivisions of the Appalachian belt, see the Gander and the Dungeon and Gander zone. This same geology is shared by many companies which have been making great discoveries lately. Puma Exploration, which partnered with a major just recently now so they're in the same geological formation as us. And of course, very well known a couple of years ago, Newfound Gold. I mean, Newfound Gold, again, what's nice, if you look at Newfound Gold's presentation, what do they start talking about? A saddle reef. It's nice. So Newfound Gold, again, another great story where a prospector found an outcrop, the Keats family, with high-grade visible gold. They did some drilling. And just to give you an idea, sometimes, yes, it's exploration is in the end that you want to find a deposit. But the excitement is along the way. Newfound Gold, a couple years ago, had a $2 billion market cap just with great drilling. So, when the market takes note, that's what's fun about this business. It could happen. And also, we saw the same geology here of what the Goldboro. Goldboro has the Dufferin mine, which is another great example of a saddle reef mine, a high-grade saddle reef that was mined in the past. So we share this geology here where there's some of the most newest exciting development in gold exploration is happening there. And way at the tip of that is us. At the bottom of Quebec right there. Again, it's a different geology than we have in the Canadian Shield. It's a younger rock, it's a younger geology. which again has often been overlooked. But look, it's as gold bearing as anything else. So the potential has always been there. The Beauce is something really peculiar. The Beauce is it's one of Canada's main placer gold districts. It's the only major placer gold district in eastern North America. Yeah, there's some placer gold which was mined which was found in Nova Scotia, but of course as the major industrial scale placer mining, it's the only place in eastern North America, and it's still the largest historical placer gold deposit in eastern North America is in the Beauce. Better well known, of course, are the placer gold districts in the Yukon, the Klondike, the Caribou. Now, again, what all these districts have in common, all placer districts, it's not just here, also around the world, is that, again, like I said, placer gold has had little interest of the majors over the last decades. But that changed recently because it's finding high-grade bedrock placer gold deposits has been more and more difficult as the decades gone by. In other words, large gold discoveries, we could see that there's a downtrend of finding new major hard rock gold deposits. So the idea was, well, let's look at some of these old placer deposits which have, everybody has ignored or just forgotten over time. It has new attention. Again, like I explained, a placer gold deposit, a gold anomaly. It came from somewhere. If you can trace back to where that gold came from, oh, there's a chance that you might find a deposit. And there's been some success in that. A great example of this, my favorite example, is the Klondike. Again, Klondike had a big, the famous Klondike gold rush in the late 1800s. And then nothing happened for like almost 100 years. And well, they never found the source, so there is no source. There's no source because they never found the source. Then it becomes just overlooked and that. But what? There was a prospector, Sean Ryan, that found, he was looking at old books and did find long story short, they finally found a bedrock source that explains in part where some of the Klondike gold came from, the placer gold. And that deposit, it's the white gold deposit in Yukon, which is what, up to many million ounces right there. And that started a whole new, it changed everything in Canada. Suddenly, a lot of the majors were attracted to placer projects to see if you can do a placer hard rock exploration. A more recent example was the Caribou. Caribou in British Columbia was another placer gold district, and there was a junior there working. Was at Barkerville. Barkerville was bought about 2 years ago or so. Was bought by Osisko. Same thing. There was a placer deposit, hard rock source, and they're expanding the hard rock source to mine right there, Osisko. And there's the Beauce. We have it all to ourselves. That's what's great. So we're the first ones. We're doing, again, somebody asked, as people looking at us, yeah, of course, people are really curious there. We're being looked at because we're the only player in the area doing that. Now, this is the area we have. Again, we're very fortunate, but it's the placer district I'm talking about is the Beauce. The Beauce is where? The Beauce is about an hour's drive south of Quebec City, 3 hours from Montreal. It saddles between Quebec City and the U.S. border. A lot of the rivers in southern Quebec are known to have placer gold in them. But two districts in particular have historical placer gold mining, or at least in commercial, industrial scale mining. One was basically in the Ditton area, and of course one is in the Beauce. So the Beauce is really peculiar. The Beauce has a great history, unknown. For any history buffs out there, the Beauce was the site of the first gold rush, way before the Klondike. Famous story in the 1840s when a girl, Clotilde Gilbert, was watering a horse, and suddenly she sees something shine in the Gilbert River. What's a brook, really? And what it is? Well, it's a pigeon-sized gold nugget. And that's how Canada's first gold rush started. And then that whole chain of events happened with that. Like any gold discovery, word gets out fast, it starts a gold rush. So the first gold rush, where was it in Canada? In the Beauce where we are. The first gold mining company, in the Beauce where we are. Some of the largest gold nuggets ever found came from our property in the Beauce. Now, there was, from 1840s to about 1914, really, there was different intermittent. There was industrial scale placer mining with with the last operation was in the 1960s, where there was a giant dredging operation. And of course, our other discovery, our Ditton placer project, it's closer to the U.S. border than that. So so also what's fortunate is that what I guess makes our property maybe even more valuable is that Quebec, last year, Quebec put a law where you can't explore on private land anymore. So all of southern Quebec, even though there's this great history of mining, and not just that, there's also old copper mines in the area, and that all that is now inaccessible because of the laws that you're not allowed taking claims and doing exploration on private property anymore in Quebec. So you just excluded half the province, just up north and that. But we're fortunate is that since we're grandfathered, because we had the claims, we have blocks of claims before the law came in, and as long as we keep working our claims, we have them. So our claims become more valuable because you can't get them anywhere, folks. We're the only ones there. So it's nice. I mean, unfortunate. I think there was much more prospects other around, but at least we have our claim block, our claim of interest to keep working, and enough room to make new discoveries on it, which is nice. One of the reasons maybe it's a bit long, but it's part of Canadian history, is that one of the reasons why did the Beauce not become a Val d'Or or a Timmins, Ontario, even though there was a history of gold mining in it, because of a legal dispute. When gold was found in the 1840s, again, things set in motion pretty fast. The descendants, the great-grandchild of the last lord of the place. Quick history there. Before the British invasion of Canada, New France, the land tenure system was a seigneurial system, or a bit like imitating what was happening in Europe. It was lordships. So you had a lord, he has the land, you work on the land, you pay the lord. So even though by the time the gold rush came around, there was the seigneurial system was abolished. The descendants of the old lord says, yeah, we don't own the lord anymore. We're not lords there anymore, but we still claim rights on gold and silver and the metals. So he made a complaint, and he was given rights and titles to it. So just when the gold rush was starting, out comes the Deliri family saying, okay, everybody, you owe us 25%. And of course, that started a huge dispute. Nobody wanted to pay that, and it was not only that, because it wasn't just mining companies who were contesting. The people that owned the land there, the people that inherited the land, les habitants, or the citizens that worked the land for the Lord, were given title to the land that they worked on. Les centenaires, history, les sénatali. Sorry. The old term basically of, so they became, a lot of the families that were there, which are still the same families today, interesting enough. When you look at the old maps, when you look at the Poulain family, the Rodrigue family, they're still there, it's the same families, fascinating. Everybody was contesting, but anyways, long story short, the government, the court gave right to the descendants of the Cyril family that they have rights on the gold. But still, it took 20 years of a court fight. After 20 years, we're up to late 1800s, and that basically killed. So what happened was there was status quo, which in southern Quebec, you could not do exploration. You couldn't get mining rights or claims on exploration to do your exploration in southern Quebec, and that lasted incredibly. It was only in 1985 that was overturned, so fairly recent. So that what it is that there was a stagnation. There was a stagnation. There was an arrested development of any mining really activity in southern Quebec. So that's unfortunate, but it became our advantage in a way. So yeah, so that's what I'm so interesting. A bit Quebec heritage history. Definitely, if you're interested in history, definitely worth the read. It's fascinating stuff. Like I said, we have our claim blocks, even though you can't, in southern Quebec, you can't do exploration anymore. Within our claim block, we're allowed. And also another advantage is that as far as placer channel is, for most of the placer gold channel, we don't just have, of course, the mineral claimed and rights. We also own the real estate. So we own the land, which is significant. If ever we go forward into some sort of placer gold production, we own the land. Most of it anyways. At least some of the richest deltas, what we're talking about, it's on our land, which is quite fortunate. Again, just a bit of history here. You know, when we talk about placer gold, everybody thinks it's people gold panning in a river. It's not that. It's not what would happen there. The placer gold deposit it's buried underneath many meters of glacial till, 15 to 40 meters. And what they did is that they dug shafts and tunnels to scrape up the layer that has the gold nuggets in it, the auriferous till and the saprolite, bring it up to surface, wash it, and that. So it was never in the river itself. It was all activity was happening within shafts and tunnels at the bottom of the valley. In the 1960s, the approach was different. Instead of digging shafts and tunnels, so 2 kilometers further at another high-grade placer zone along the placer channel, in the 1960s was, instead of digging shafts and tunnels, let's use massive earthworks to just strip, bring in a floating dredge, which is like a giant factory which dredges the placer deposit and also separates the gold in that. So that was the approach. So our objectives is 2 objectives. Again, placer gold exploration, to see if we can define the circle placer deposit and see if we can bring it to a resource and to see can it be mined. The second one, of course, is low gold exploration, like what I explained before we've been doing with the salary structure. So those are our 2 main activities. Like I said, another special thing about our property is that our property holds the largest historical placer gold deposit in eastern North America. And that's something. It's very considerable. Again, it turns out it could be a significant placer deposit, as stated by our exploration target, and the gold came from someplace, and we're right on the we're chasing and we're right on target for that, making discovery. Now, what we did, when I talk about exploration target, what we did is that a couple years ago, we found and were able to purchase never published drill logs of the placer deposit. So this company, the giant Yuba dredge, when they came in, of course, this was a major investment. The dredge came from, it was transporting pieces from Idaho. It was a major gold mining operation from the 1960s. Of course, they didn't do this blindly. They did what we do today. The whole property was drilled. They came up with a gold resource. They brought in the investment. They brought in the dredge. They started mining. But here's the thing. The drill logs, usually for the past 100 years, when you do exploration, you're supposed to deposit all your data and information to the Ministry of Natural Resources. For some reason, the drill logs are not there. The only material that was found was the results of the gold reserve by sector, but the actual drill log, the drill logs are important. It's not just how much gold there was globally, is that it gives all the restrictions. The length of the hole, the depth, what type of material, what type of bedrock, where the gold was found, how much gold was found, the description of the gold grains, the gold nuggets. All that was not available until we found it. And that's what with 2025, that's where we were working. So we had to, all this data, we had to compile and digitalize all this data. So hundreds and hundreds of drill holes, the description of each drill hole. And what comes challenging, again, even though we had to work with drill holes which were done in late 50s to drill holes that were done in the 80s to even the drill hole Eurogold did, Fancam did. The gold volume, gold resource, it was always in cubic yards. That's easy enough to convert, but no, then you have to find the nuances, is that they went straight to the chase. To calculate an economy of a hole, it was cubic yards in cents. And the thing is that the results we were seeing, it wasn't the result of what was the grade of the placer deposit, because they didn't report it that way. They reported that it was cubic yards divided by the length of the hole. So in other words, and in cents. So in one figure, they would find out if that sector was economics or not. They would divide it. So what we have to do is that you want to find out what the grade is of the placer deposit itself. So you have to multiply, the cubic yard had to be multiplied by the length of the hole, and then you have to divide it up by what was the real thickness of the mineralized zone to get your grams per cubic meter. And after we did that, that's when we saw that, yeah, right away it came out of why they put the dredge in certain places. It was just like, some really nice high-grade zones. But we also found out, when we say that the placer deposits were underestimated, why? Again, because when they drilled the placer deposit, drilling to what you do is that you drill vertical holes straight down in the fence pattern across the placer channel. What we found out by looking at historical data is that often the hole with the highest grade was the last hole or first hole, depending on which side you look at it. So what it means is that normally in this business, in this industry, is that when you have a high-grade hole, you always have to keep drilling next to the hole to see if it could. You have to close the zone. You want to see if this trend continues. So what we found out is that sometimes some of the highest grade was the last hole drill with no drilling, follow drilling next to it. So the zone is open. How far does it go? We don't know. So we have to assume that in some areas that the zone is open on one side. That's why it could be bigger. And why does that happen? That happens even today, by the way. It's nothing that sometimes drill programs, it's very intense and something that can last. It can last maybe like 2 months or one summer. And by the time you get your results, everybody's gone home. And then you have your results. And then because of circumstance, maybe the company has no money or things have changed, you don't go back. There's no going back to continue the drilling. And that's what happened. It pretty much was the case, especially the drilling that was done in the 1980s. 1980s, there was 2 companies, including Université de Laval, which did some great drill program, great data. It was probably very detailed. However, they hit some high-grade zones, which was never followed up. It's just how it is. But it's okay. But now that's our advantage right there. Another thing why we believe it's deeper is that some of the highest gold grains was from a rock type called saprolite. What saprolite is? Saprolite is heavily weathered bedrock. So from what our model shows is that some gold grains and nuggets fell into the heavily fractured bedrock. But also what we found out is that at first we believed the placer gold deposit was really close by, maybe even underneath the placer deposit in the bedrock beneath. But when we drilled in 2021, no gold whatsoever. That was very puzzling because some of the gold grains that we were able to get from the placer deposit, from the saprolite rock, were very pristine, very crystalline. And we're wondering, that means that gold, it's in situ, the gold's from there, it didn't travel. What we believe happened was that a lot of the gold came in by solution. So when we talk about gold coming into the valley from the ancient tributaries, you have to imagine back then, tens of millions of years ago, the soil was much more acidic. It was very hot, humid, and so we believe a lot of the gold was transported by solution down the valley. And then when gold meets gold, gold likes to stick together. When it meets, it grows upon each other. So when gold atoms go and forms crystals. So what we found out is that we believe a lot of the gold in the saprolite, in the cracks and crevices, grew by accretion. So it's a combo of both. Some gold did travel physically, detritic, as we say. Sorry, in English, I don't know the word. Did fall down into the valley and down into the bottom, into cracks and crevices. But some of the gold, perhaps even on some of these gold grains, grew by accretion to create some nuggets. Perhaps that's how some of the even mega nuggets were even created. So that's why we believe that in the new analysis, that the exploration, that the historical placer deposit could be extremely underestimated. That's why we doubled the exploration target. Again, we tried different antiques because a placer deposit is a horizontal deposit, and you're wasting a lot of money drilling in the overburden to get to just the couple meters of what you really want. So we found out, is there another way of getting into it? We tried that. We tried horizontal directional drilling. It worked, but I think it needs a bit tweaking in that, but it's something we'll see. It was pretty interesting, though. It was very innovative. The industry even wrote a special article on us because we were the first ones to use it for overburden drilling. Still, so what we found out, what we found out is that, again, now we know that the gold, we know where the gold came from. It came into the valley from the tributaries. That we figured it out. We found out that at the bottom of each tributary, there's the zones of high-grade placers from the historical drilling they want to attack. And we also discovered, what's nice is that one of the major tributaries, the tributary which was, most of the gold was mined, not in the Gilbert River, but was beneath one of the tributaries called the Geobrook. And it was underneath the Geobrook. This is where you had like kilometers of tunnels. It's where the big nuggets came from in that. What we found out is that what's nice is that the LIDAR and drilling seems to indicate that at one point in the past, the Geobrook, which flows right into the Gilbert, at one point was flowing, instead of flowing like southwest, it flowed southeast and then went out. And it so happens that some of the high-grade gold we're getting seems to match with the traversier, the old path of that tributary. So there is a possibility that we could hit a zone which could be as interesting of what was mined in the past. So we got to go look at that. It's going to be a lot of fun. So this is where we came up with our exploration target. Again, I explained before, why is it called an exploration target? It's not a gold resource because most of the data we were using was before the 43101 regulatory rules on how to describe mineral deposits. So that's why. So that's why, even though the quality of the data we had brings us high conviction of what we're looking at, we can't call it a gold resource because it was done before 2001. But still, it's extremely indicative. So, you know, we got almost 4 million cubic meters of material, which we believe could be gold bearing and placer gold at grades between 0.8 to 4.9. And let me explain something about placer gold grades, just to give you an idea. What's being mined in the Yukon now, and is considered economical, anybody know? 0.3 grams per cubic meter. That's what's being mined. That could be economical if you got the volume and it's really at surface and that. So if we have 0.8 and higher up, this is considered, for placer deposit, that's high grade. That's high grade. It's really, really, really indicative. So yeah, so we can't wait to go at it, and there's a possibility that this could be a really important asset in the company right now, which is being underestimated and perhaps even overlooked, even at this current point in time in the market. So again, we want to know, can we advance this project? Can this project be advanced from an exploration target to a gold resource to possibly even a gold reserve to getting a mining lease? It's possible because back in back when this was Eurogold, we wanted to do a giant bulk sampling. At the time, the government said, well, if you want to do a giant bulk sampling, question is no, but if you succeed in getting if you do all the work required to get a mining lease, we'll give you a mining lease. So maybe a bit naively, a lot of people said, oh, it'll never work, you'll never pass the environmental audit. But we did. This was back in Eurogold in 2011. There was an environmental audit that was done. We got a certificate of authorization from the Ministry of Environment, which people thought we would never get. We got it. We got the certificate of authorization back then of the town, back then. We also got it from CPTAQ. And somebody put a big paintbrush and said this area was agricultural when it's always been a mine. I don't know why. But still, because of that, we had to get permission from the Agricultural Commission, which we did. So is it possible? Yes, it's very possible. It's very possible. Again, this is what always drove me from the beginning, since the creation of this company. We wanted to know, where did this placer gold come from? It came from somewhere. It's a giant gold anomaly. But here, the problem was, when we looked at it, is that even though the placer gold, historical placer gold deposit was really well defined, really well known, with the history of it being mined, the data, the geological data, the geology that surrounds this deposit and the surrounding area was virtually unknown. Because every time there was a company that generated interest to come in and have a look at this, the interest was always the placer deposit. And it's understandable. Placer equals potential gold, cash right away. So all the money and funds and capital is always focused on exploitation versus exploration. So we're one of the first companies to sort of reverse that. You know what? And Eurogold was that. When Eurogold came in, in 2010 in the Beauce, the idea again was, oh, let's see if we can go straight to exploitation of this placer channel. But when we came public, we said, you know what? There's something else happening here which could be bigger than the placer deposit. And so that's why we decided to switch the idea of, wait, let's not just focus right away on exploitation towards that end, even though it's an important end. Let's also exploration. And that's what we found out, that there was no data around that. We had to gather all the data ourselves. And we did great work. And hard to believe, but we were the first to do some really important stuff which you'd think would have been done basically a long time ago. Geophysics, doing modern geophysics all over the area, collecting hundreds and hundreds of rock samples from whatever outcrop we can find, trenching. And this is where we started seeing, there's something happening here. We started to have a greater understanding of the geology in the area. And also what stumped us, again, as soon as you get outside the placer channel, there's no gold. There was no gold in the hard rock, no gold in bedrock until the discovery of the outcrop. But the outcrop also showed that everywhere we saw that there's these folds, these antiforms. And when we found the gold in the antiform, well, it looks like we had a saddle reef formation there. As you can see, it gives you an idea. Saddle reef, I explained before, it's layers of rock sandwich. And then with with stress and form, it forms these folds, the geological folds, and the gold is found within the axis and the antiform of these folds. It's a saddle reef. So this is the model we came up with. This is what we believe is actually happening in the Beauce. And I know it looks like a simple drawing, but this simple model here, it's the first time in 175 years somebody puts it all together. And this is what's happening. You had a saddle reef formation there, which has been eroded over time. Gold fell at the bottom of the valley, created the placer gold deposit. And it was this deposit which was mined in the past. It would dig shafts and tunnels to it. Later on, it was a dredging operation. That's what it is. That's what we found. It's simplistic, but this is what's happening right there. Again, what we showed is that how did gold form into the placer channel? Well, we could also see it just by LIDAR and the tributaries. Gold came in from the saddle reef formations that got eroded, and gold came down through physical movement or by solution, which created the placer gold deposit. Just perspective, people were asking. You see, this is the Gihou Brook, which falls into the Gilles. This is what was mined in 1800s underground with different methods. As time evolved, it was all picks and shovels. Then it became mechanical when there was steam, and then electrical. This was worked by electricity in 1914. And then 2 kilometers away, another delta. See, coming in from this. This is a brook here, which you'll only see it when the snow melts. But this tributary here created another delta here, which was mined by the Yuba operation. But what we discovered from our new exploration target analysis of the drill data, we discovered, there's pockets of high-grade gold from, again, at the bottom of an old tributary that has not been mined. Also interesting, high-grade gold from an old tributary which used to flow, instead of flowing towards the southwest, used to be southeast, so really interesting. And there's another high-grade gold zone further up here, about 3 kilometers right over here. So these are the 3 zones that we want to go have a really close look. It could be pretty exciting. Again, all this, our antiform, our saddle reef was discovered by an outcrop, a prospector. We went, we sampled the outcrop. We got 10 grams gold per ton from the outcrop, and then we followed up by drilling, bedrock diamond drilling. And again, same thing. Very classic of a saddle reef structure. You drill into the limbs of the saddle reef or the antiform, you get lower grade gold. The closer you start getting towards the axis, the higher the grade gets. So we believe if we keep drilling and focusing on the axis antiforms, we're going to hit some pretty interesting grades. Now, from our not just our drilling, of course, but previous to drilling, we did geophysics, soil sampling, and we believe that the saddle reef structure goes on for many kilometers, 8 kilometers. And there's also the possibility that there's more than one antiform. Basically, it's classic geology. You got antiform, and then when the curve goes down, the trough of the curve, it's called a syncline, antiform, and that. So we know that there's synclines and antiforms from this structure that we're drilling, from the gold A zone to the placer deposit. There's got to be another one, maybe even two. So keep an eye on that one. It could be another gold-bearing structure that we have to look at. Again, a very successful drill program. 88% of our drill holes hit gold, which is a very high. What's normal for this industry? Look, what's normal for grassroots is 20 to 40% of your holes hitting gold, which is considered okay and good. 50% is really exceptional. 88% for grassroots just is great targeting and really above average. Again, it's indicative that we're onto something here. Like I talked this before, we did a 3D modeling in that. Again, it just shows that the 3D modeling also confirms that that the higher the grade gold is concentrated within a very tight and controlled structure. So you don't have to don't waste drill holes outside the structure. Just keep following the structure. Keep following the structure at length, at depth, then we have more chances of hitting higher grade gold and confirming also that this structure is could be massive. Exploration milestone, really important, is that people ask, how do we know that the structure we have is the source or one of the sources of the placer gold deposit? Well, again, it's geology. The placer gold is the same. The placer gold is gold, but a gold grain, there's a lot of information inside a gold grain. So we were able to get gold grains from the bedrock at the outcrop we sampled. So gold grains that came from the bedrock to gold grains a gold grain or gold nugget from the placer deposit. They each had the same gold to silver ratio. It's called its finesse. So very, very identical. In other words, that our gold nugget came from a source which came with the same gold finesse. So we have a match there. Also important is that when they drilled the placer deposit, the till, the material that surrounds each gold grain and nugget was sampled and came up with spikes of what's called pathfinder elements that spike up. So basically, arsenic. When we did a sample of our drill cores, we had the same hits of pathfinder elements. Yeah. So really interesting. So again, and of course, the very physical idea is that it's also just sort of visually in line. It's in the erosion path. The structure's in the erosion path of right downstream or downhill of the placer deposit. So all that basically is so when we say it's the likely source, what we found, it's these reasoning right here. Which also comes with something really important to mention, especially with silver reaching out. Who would believe that silver seems to be approaching $100? So it's worth noting that silver has always been an important component of what was been mined in the past. Like I said, gold grains and gold nuggets, there was always a silver component encapsulated inside the gold grain. So if there is a mining operation, and also in our drill cores, when we the gold that was associated, the silver that was associated in our drill core was 23%, and the gold found in the gold grains from the outcrop, 15%. Gold that is encapsulated within the gold nuggets that was mined in the past, 13%. How do we know? Because we also, like when we were able to get the drill core data, we also had all the material from the Beauce Placer operation, and we got some of the receipts from the Royal Mint, and what they were getting in silver that was being extracted from the gold grains, the Royal Mint, was around that 15%. So we can assume that part of the exploration target, well, there is a portion of that which is silver. Nice. Great timing to come out with that. Again, this is another great example. When we talk about Saddle Reef, the great example what's happening in the Beauce, it's what happened in Australia, the Bendigo region. Basically, the term Saddle Reef comes from the Bendigo region of Australia. Now, Bendigo and the Beauce has a lot of similarities. They both started, and just to give you, of course, what she's, again, in Bendigo has a saddle reef structure which has produced over 22 million ounces of gold from that structure. We just found a similar looking structure which is gold bearing, so which could go on for kilometers and at depth. So this is what makes it exciting, and that's what compels us to keep drilling, to keep at it. Perhaps we're onto something big. But it's fun just noting the similarities between the Beauce and it's funny, somebody once said that, when somebody invents something, or if there's a new discovery, somewhere around the world around the same time, they were doing the same thing. It's like, when they started doing Renaissance painting in Europe, well, Tibetan monks were doing the same techniques drawing the religious paintings. So it's funny. The reason I bring this up, because when in Bendigo, placer gold was discovered. When women were washing their clothes in Bendigo Creek, they find some gold nuggets. It starts off a whole gold rush in that area. In the Beauce, at around the same time, look at this. In 1851, women washing their clothes find gold in the Bendigo Creek. In 1847, Clétige Dubois walking wharf finds a gold nugget around the same time in the Beauce. So each has a placer gold rush at around the same time, which quickly evolved into industrial scale. They found out first gold was found in the crooks and rivers. Then they found out, the gold is actually found at the bottom of the valleys, of buried valleys. Same Bendigo. So what they did shafts and tunnels to get at the gold in the Beauce, shafts and tunnels to get at the placer gold. Largest gold nuggets in the world comes from the Bendigo. Largest gold nuggets in Canada came from the Beauce. Nice similarities. Again, what they found out was in Bendigo, they found the source of where the placer gold came from. And that's what they found was that gold came from Saddle Reef. Again, it's an antiform structure where the gold gets accumulated within the axis antiform. And that's what's been mined to this day, over 20 million ounces. In the Beauce, they never found the source. Until us today, we found the gold is coming from a structure very similar as what's happening in Bendigo. It's just uncanny how the similarities. So again, it's what compels us to keep going. See, yeah, Bendigo Forestville, it's a high grade, low cost underground gold mine. And we found the structure. Ditton property was another, I think, significant placer gold channel that we discovered. And it was discovered by what? By this operating sand and quarry gravel. An operating, which basically they're mining the sand and gravels, and out comes gold with it. But they didn't know that. So the gold is just being sold with the sand and gravel. But this was, again, it's in southern Quebec, near the United States border, about, again, 3 hours drive from Montreal, and about almost 2.5 hours south of Quebec City. Same thing, though. The rivers around it were mined. There was a small scale, but in small scale industrial mining on the mining brook. That's what it's called. It's called a mining brook. That should have attracted a lot of people. But again, our deposit, our placer gold deposit was, again, the discovery goes down to the work of a local prospector. So this local prospector has been working there 40 years, bequeaths to us his lifetime work. He did prospecting the area. And again, he amassed hundreds of gold samples, deposit, grains, gold grain, all placer gold grains, hundreds of them. A massive amount of data, which we didn't even have time yet to go over all of it yet. But it was his data which led us to this operating sand quarry, which has gold in pretty much every sample we've taken from. And also led us to identify there's a placer channel going on here, which could, again, go on for many kilometers, totally unexplored. We did work in 2022, 2023. We did a lot of sampling. We did some bulk sampling. We did sonic drilling. And sonic drilling has confirmed that there is a channel going on, happening there. And, our sampling, when we sampled the placer, the tertiary layer of the placer channel at the bottom of the operating sand and gravel quarry, we're getting grades 0.6, which so far is very indicative. Mind you, in Yukon, they're mining at 0.3 and they're economical. So we were getting 0.6. And we even add up to over 2 grams per cubic meter further up. And of course, getting out these really nice gold nuggets right there. So again, it's an area of interest. We do plan to go back. Like I said here, when we sample at the bottom, the floor of the quarry, when we dredged that, we were getting 0.6 average. Further up, we even got a 2 grams or more. So it's very, very indicative. And again, it's a giant gold anomaly. We got to go have a look at it. And again, we found a paleo placer channel. What interests us, what's interesting about placer gold operations around the world is that they tend to be low capex and just requires gravity and water. So interesting. And again, at the tail end of that discovery, we found there was a valley, just a valley, just before the U.S. border. There's a valley called like a cul-de-sac, basically. And within the valley, we were finding interesting amount of placer gold. Talking about this, again, if you want more information, we have a lot of information on our website. You can download this presentation off our website. We have a great YouTube channel, and once in a while I like making a very informative YouTube videos when I can. All that's very accessible, so we have a lot of information. But if you require more information, feel free to contact me. Give me a call, send me an email, send me a text, and I'll be very happy to answer all your questions. Thanks. Merci beaucoup.